follow the project, you will know that this is actually a redux because the show has been on for over a year now, but the format has changed and some of the way we did things a while ago is pretty different. But if you're new, then let me tell you a little bit about what's going on. This is the Monster in a Glass podcast, part of the Black Liver Project. What this is all about is tasting cocktails, or really it's discovering cocktails in a new way, historically, culturally. We basically go over the background of cocktails, classic cocktails, well-known ones and forgotten ones, lost ones. So we give some background, and then we take it to a bar here in Chicago where a group of us sit around and try the cocktail and kind of discuss some of the stories and such that surround it. And I think it's fair to say that we also kind of diverge a little bit. We have a lot of fun, but not only is this a show about history of cocktails, but it tends to be history through cocktails, because sometimes it's not just about the drinks, it's about the people who are drinking them. This is all about storytelling. There's a ton out there, and we're here to explore it all. The Monster in a Glass project, it's all about the idea that each of these cocktails is a strange beast, something that we may or may not be familiar with. Before you're familiar with something, it's a monster, and we're here to turn monsters into animals as we get to know them. So, without further ado, the first part of our show is a couple of us sitting and talking about it. I'm here with our researcher and historian, Mr. Jason Cruz, who checks out cocktails, learns about them, and then we sit down and discuss them in context. So we are going to embark on a discussion of the French 75.
So the French 75 cocktail. So this is something that I had no idea about. I had never heard of where the name came from, never heard of the cocktail. So what I set out to do, you had given me a heads up that it was named after an artillery gun. So just doing some research on that. Which do you want to know about first, the cocktail or the gun?
Let's figure out the cocktail.
Okay. So the cocktail. The ingredients aren't that uncommon. We have 2 ounces of gin, 1 ounce of lemon juice.
Champagne's not uncommon, but it's not something you usually find in a cocktail.
Not usually. You see it here and there, and it usually, from what I remember, when I do see it, it's kind of always added in the same way. You mix the drink, and then you top it off with some champagne.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's for the fizzy factor.
Yes.
But it is
effervescence.
Yeah.
As well as some of the sweetness.
So one of the things about this drink is that, it's gin, lemon juice, simple syrup or sugar, and then top it off with champagne.
Now, this comes from one place, right?
It does. It comes from Paris. If you look on the internet, you'll find everybody says, well, it's named after the artillery gun, and it came from Harry's. So I started with that information. Mm-hmm. I usually, when I hear information like that, I go, it's probably bullshit, But this time I was like, that sounds valid. I'm going to go with that. It sounds pretty reasonable. So I started looking up, trying to find recipes for this, and it did show up in a few recipe books. First couple that I found were post-Prohibition. So I'm giving you the dates because this is kind of significant into really hammering and nailing in the time period from which it came from. So Patrick Gavin Duffy, 1934, has a French 75 cocktail. Same recipe, gin, lemon juice, sugar, champagne. And then there's a book, Along the Wine Trail, which is 1935. So both of these are post-U.S. Prohibition. 2 of the first books that I can find that are post-U.S. Prohibition. And same recipe. So I started there. I said, okay, so we have a French 75 at that point. And then I didn't find it too many other places. And then I found it in the book Cocktails, How to Mix Them by Robert of the Embassy Club, which is from 1922. And we've talked about Robert before in a number of other drinks. He's very good at telling you where the drinks come from, even when they're not his own drinks. This doesn't happen often, but sometimes it happens where you find something that goes, here's where the drink came from, and this is when it was created.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's pretty unusual, but in this case, I think this is the second time he's done this for us.
Yeah, it pretty much nails it. And I think that the origin is pretty solid.
Mm-hmm. So what he said, what is different about his recipe that he puts in there is there's 2 dashes of grenadine. And there is also 1/6 gill of Calvados.
It's a bastardization.
And what's strange about this is that he lists it as the 75 cocktail. Now, his book came out in 1922. Robert Vermeer was in London, or just about to leave London at this time, but he worked at the Embassy Club in London. And he says, this cocktail was very well appreciated in Paris during the war. It has been called after the famous light French field gun and was introduced by Henry of Henry's Bar fame in Paris. Now, he gets Henry wrong. His name's not Henry, it's Harry. Harry of Harry's Bar, not Henry.
Didn't they hang out together?
That I've never been able to figure out, but Harry McElhenney, who the bar is named after, they were both bartending at the same time period. So they both actually came out with a book in 1922. He's telling us right here. So it kind of reaffirms all of what people say of where it came from. I tried to get a hold of Harry McElhenney's book. It's pretty rare. I haven't been able to get a hold of even a microfilm copy at this point, unless I want to go to the British Library, which I would like to, but I can't right now.
So what was Harry's Bar?
Harry's Bar was a very famous bar in Paris that...
Was it the New York bar at that time?
It was, yes. It was.
Or was it just Harry's?
It was the New York bar before he got a hold of it. He worked there as a bartender, and then I think that, if I remember correctly, he bought it after that. But he was a bartender there prior. He was a Scotsman. So I think it went from the New York bar in Paris to Harry's New York bar in Paris.
Okay.
But it was a very famous hangout for GIs.
It was an American watering hole.
Right. So you had a lot of American GIs there, which also lends credence to the idea that a cocktail named the French 75 is named after the artillery gun if you have a lot of GIs hanging out in the bar. And one of the things that Ted Haig says is that it packs a punch, packs a wallop. When he said that, I was like, well, let me look at this. And you could see it. I mean, it's mostly gin.
Yeah.
And then champagne. So it's probably, something that's fairly strong.
And it's probably something easy to drink.
Possibly. I mean, it's sweet and sour and gin. It sounded... I don't really care for gin that much.
Yeah, but with the champagne in it,
right,
that's going to smooth out all of the rough edges.
Right. So I was thinking that this was, something that I would actually make at home. It's simple enough. It probably is pretty tasty. So yeah, New York bar in Paris in 1911, and then Harry bought it in 1923. I actually did have the information, and he turned into Harry's New York bar.
Okay.
So by all the information that I found, Harry created this drink, and he named it the French 75 after the gun. There's no definitive proof as to why he called it that, but as we've discovered through going through a lot of cocktails, there's not usually a rhyme or reason as to why a drink is named a drink.
Well, this one, as you already mentioned, it was created in a bar popular with American servicemen after World War I. And that really is all that needs to be said. I mean, think about it. These men were pulled out of their home, probably a place that they had been all their lives, because, that's the way America was back then. You were born someplace, and you lived there, and you probably didn't go too far, and you died there. But World War I happened, and due to circumstances, the U.S. became involved, and suddenly all of these young men who had no experience really, other than what they knew of their home, were sent to another country and experienced World War I, which was a horror show.
Yeah.
And in that kind of environment, these people are going to come together and they're going to create their own brotherhood. and their own language and mythology, and it's going to be all surrounding the things that connect them. And an artillery gun, yeah, that's going to be a part of it. Things like, and these kinds of things happen in war all the time. I mean, like the term "son of a gun," that's comes from artillery on a ship, and there's just a ton of things like this, and so this cocktail was christened by the patrons of this bar, and that probably made it all the more popular. These guys were part of something called the Lost Generation, where all of these Americans who were in World War I, the war ended, and they just stuck around. Mm-hmm. And, I've heard that the world was so different in Europe, the way of life, the women. They were probably hearing that Prohibition was about to start in their home country.
That would make me stay wherever I am if they're still serving booze. It's like, ugh.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, why would I head back there?
I just went through utter hell.
Yeah.
I'm probably experiencing, horrible memories and stuff, and I would just rather just pickle them.
Yeah.
So
pickle those memories.
That's right. There were a lot of GIs, American GIs, who stayed in Europe, became artists, became writers. There are numerous.
Was Hemingway? Was he?
Yes.
Yeah, he was.
Yes,
part
he
of
was one of them. Yeah. He was definitely one of them. And you know what? There are cocktails that I think we can delve into this a little bit more. The background to the cocktails actually address their story a little bit more directly. So, that's just a little bit of background and why, people would name a drink after a gun. That's why. It was something that was central to their world.
And it's good that you mentioned that, because I think that's a good segue into the gun itself, because it was central to their world. This gun, in a lot of ways, changed the way it certainly added more casualties by its efficiency and accuracy. So it was created, what I could find was the official introduction of this gun was 1897.
1897, okay.
So they had started work on it in the 1890s. There were two officials in the French army. So there was Joseph Albert, I'm guessing it's Albert Deport. Let's go with that. It would be, if I said it the way I wanted to say it, Joe Albert Deport.
Joe Albert Deport.
But Joseph Albert Deport is generally attributed to the initial development of the gun. Their ranks changed over time. So
who was he? Was he an engineer, or was he just a sergeant?
He was a military. He was a military man. So he was like a colonel or a lieutenant colonel. But
did he have any background in manufacturing?
He did. I mean, he came from a line of, I don't want to say inventors, sciencey people.
Okay.
I think his father was a chemist. I could be mixing this up with Deville, who was the other man. So Deport started it, and then there was Charles Etienne St. Clair Deville, who finished Deport's work, because Deport didn't really like what was happening, and they were kind of contracted.
He didn't like what was happening?
He didn't like there were differences of opinions on what would be the best way to manufacture this gun, or what would, so he kind of left the project, and there was a company.
Did he leave the project, or was he canned?
I don't think, it sounded like he left the project, that he was like, All I could find was that both of these guys were, pretty high-ranking army officials, but also were, in the gun manufacturing business. So they had some kind of credentials, I'm guessing, in sciencey inventor stuff. So so they started that in the 1890s, and it was introduced in the 1897s. Now, it was also known as and I'm going to butcher the French language now, so badly that I'm just going to apologize right now. Siswante Kind. I'm not even. It looks like sexy, and it's Soixante Quinze. which is French for 75. So whatever French,
Yeah, okay, yeah.
whatever is French for 75, that's what I mean.
And why is it a 75? Wasn't it?
It was
the
a
size of the
75
shell?
millimeter, yeah, was the size of the shell. It was officially called the French M1897 75 millimeter field gun.
So it was a freaking cannon.
It was a cannon of
They had cannons
biblical
before.
proportions, yeah. Oh, they had cannons, sure. And
So why do we care about this one?
Well, this one was the first mass-produced gun. It was the first time it was used in warfare that I could find. That they say it was demonstrated during the suppression of the Boxer Rebellion in 1901.
Oh.
And then other nations developed their own quick-firing guns in short order. So this was kind of like when they used it, everybody went, holy shit, we need to be a part of this. They got some big guns here. So it was the first one that was mass-produced.
It's interesting because they used it in the Boxer Rebellion. I mean, there are other instances of military technology being used against other peoples that really, stood no chance against it. And it's like, whether it was the machine gun or I'm not sure about that. So military historians could just totally destroy me on that. But like I know that the Europeans were very interested in trying out their new toys. Mm-hmm. And they usually did it in the places where their colonies were, where the edges of their empires, where people were, upset about them, basically coming in and taking over and pushing them around. So
well, and at the time, I mean, that's what else did you have? You didn't have world wars to test it out yet. It was like, well, we have to suppress this country because we have imperial interest in it. So, hey, bring out that gun. Let's see how it works.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we're not gonna lose anything because these people stand no chance.
Yeah.
So
we would have wiped them out anyway. But let's try this one. Maybe it'll be fun. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah. The reason it was different, I mean, there were, of course, they had cannons, they had all kinds of artillery guns, but what made this one different, besides, and why it was mass-produced, the first one to be mass-produced, is that it was the first widely produced gun that offered a combination of fixed ammunition, and so that permitted the rapid loading. Okay. It also had a recoil mechanism that allowed the carriage to remain in place when firing. Now, this was a huge problem prior to that because you'd fire a gun and it would shoot back 25 yards, and then you'd have to reset and load the gun, and by that time...
You'd have to make sure you weren't standing behind it when it went off.
Exactly. Yeah, you
get
only
rolled
did that
over
once.
by a hot gun,
Right.
It's...
Yeah, it's like, that's sort of how they weeded the herd in terms of, like, how do you pick out the dumb soldiers? And, like, don't stand there, like, why? It was going to happen anyway.
Can you be a gunner?
Right.
Not anymore. No.
Yeah.
You're...
And, it
been
does...
ground to kibble.
If you have this mechanism that is going to keep it in place, is going to be accurate and allow you to, quickly reload, because let's say you miss the first time. The enemy's not going to really stick around in the same place, so it requires all kinds of strategery to figure out where they are, where your next shot is, lining it up, firing the gun, and then, if your gun moves, then you gotta go, shit, move it back, and now they're already gone. Fuck it. So this was kind of revolutionary in what it was doing. One of the benefits of this gun, and this is why it became popular during World War I, was that warfare changed. Before, you could shoot cannons, and if you think about the Civil War, you just marched in a big line, and people shot cannonballs at you, and you didn't really hide. Well, in World War I, you had trenches, and shooting shrapnel-based artillery was kind of useless, because unless you got it right inside the trench, it's, you're just blowing up dirt.
Well, the whole generation of trenches, I mean, like I was saying, the Europeans were bringing out all their new toys.
Right.
But they hadn't used them in any place where there was really anything at stake, or where there were comparable opponents.
Sure.
World War I was the first time that really changed.
Yeah.
And it shocked everybody because everybody was thinking World War One. It wasn't going to be World War One. It was going to be a short altercation, maybe a few months at the most.
Yeah.
And it would be all said and done rather quickly. And this is kind of the way a lot of wars were prior to that. But with all of the new technology, it just became a meat grinder. Mm-hmm. Anybody could basically wipe out hundreds of humans,
Yeah.
and it put everything at a standstill. It made people dig into the earth and create places to hide for extended periods. It stopped cavalry charges. It stopped any kind of forward motion. I mean, it was very hard. Instead of meeting on a field of battle, it was all about attrition and trying to slowly whittle away at the opposition's forces, or finding a way to get them out of their entrenchment. And then you see things like gas. That's going to make people run.
Yeah.
And the artillery that would come down, and that's where you see the explosive artillery. Yeah, basically warfare changed entirely. When you see the kinds of things that happened, I imagine that this is one of the turning points. This is one of the tools that actually caused warfare to change.
Yeah, I mean, warfare before this was bloody and horrible, but this made it that much more. It was easier. You might have to get in close prior to this. You might have to use a bayonet. You might have to fire a gun that its range is about 6 feet. But this was like, we could sit and shoot these all day. We could sit. I don't even know how far it would shoot, but we could sit far away and we could blow you to bits.
And they literally would do it all day.
Oh yeah,
there were campaigns in World War I where the idea was, we're going to dump so much high explosives and artillery in this one region where we know there are a lot of Germans, or where there are a lot of French, where their bases are, where the trenches are. We're just going to carpet bomb that area. And when we're done, after 3 days of just dumping ungodly amounts of tonnage of explosives onto this small patch of land where we know that there are enemies, we're going to storm it.
Yeah.
And the fascinating thing is that inevitably, it didn't work.
Yeah.
The guys who were in the trenches, they were crazy. Mm-hmm. They had just sustained, 72 hours of shelling, constant explosions. But for the most part, the entrenchments that they had, the places where they were hiding, were good enough to keep them in significant numbers safe. Unless one area was hit, a whole, unit might be gone. But by and large, that didn't happen. So when the carpet bombing would begin, and they would just shell for days and days, and then as the smoke lifted and the enemy forces ran across the field to take the place that just got shelled, enemy gunners would pop up and then mow them down.
Yeah.
And and the soldiers who were running would be thinking, what the hell? Yeah. How did they survive that?
Right. It's first disbelief.
Yeah. And then it's dying.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you only have 1 second to think about that. And then it's like, I'm dead.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what happened over and over and over. And, when I heard these stories, I thought it was amazing too. And even just the idea that those guys in the trenches sustaining that kind of barrage for that kind of time were able to actually hold it together, to stand up and then defend themselves from an attack.
If you think about the sound of shelling, even if it's not even that close to you, if it's going around, just the sound of it over and over and over again, that would drive you crazy in itself. And then on top of that, the fear that one of these shells could have my number on it.
Yeah.
So, why wouldn't you be? I would be crazy after probably less than 72
Do you know what would actually happen? There were uncounted. It was a usual thing. That you would think that it would be impossible to sleep, but actually that situation forced soldiers into catatonia. I mean, they would fall asleep.
Yeah.
It's your body starts to go into shutdown, and you just fall asleep because that's the only thing you can do.
Yeah.
And the stress puts you under, and commanders had a hard time keeping their soldiers awake under that situation. They would just go down. And especially when you knew that there was an attack coming, you had to make sure everybody was ready, and raring to go. Like I said, all the rules for engagement in World War I had changed. Prior to this, there was such a thing as honor in war. There was lots of propaganda about soldiers and bravery and honor and everything. Any soldier who was in that kind of situation knew that was a bunch of crap because it was just a pit of mud and blood and horror.
But couldn't you say that about any advancement in warfare? I mean, yes, you're right. There was honor. There were rules. I'm doing air quotes here.
You always say those things.
Right. But
when going in.
But picture you have a field of people swinging axes and swords, and the first time somebody busts out gunpowder. What is happening now? Maybe it didn't. Maybe it was the same thing. Maybe it didn't have the effect at first, but it would scare the shit out of people. It
was more smoke and noise.
Right, and
you would pull out a gun and shoot it, and then it would
miss by.
It would likely blow up in your hand as much as hit somebody.
Same with cannons too. At the time.
That was just.
That was good enough to
exactly.
get him like off kilter,
Yeah.
So it's like I mean this probably as I was looking into all of this, I started thinking about that is the advancement. It's starting to be developed in early 1890s. It's not too far from the Civil War. That's less than 30 years where you have cannonballs until you have like high explosives, and accuracy, and you don't have to worry about it blowing up or moving. And
well, that most of the wounds in the Civil War were
herpes wounds.
If you discount disease, which was huge, it was bigger than anything. But war wounds was bayonets and knives.
Yeah,
it was not cannonballs and guns.
No, because it takes too much time to reload. After a certain point, you're like, well, fuck this. I got a knife on my gun. I got a spear, basically. Well, this guy's dicking around with his little pouch. And he's just walk him and stab him. Like that must have occurred to so many people on both sides of the war. It's just like, what the hell am I doing?
But the thing about the Civil War was everybody was ready for that kind of engagement.
Yeah,
they had already seen it. You kind of progress slowly through the years. Revolutionary War, that wasn't that different. There were some advancements, definitely, but they weren't changing the game so significantly. World War I, they all went in with certain ideas of what war was, and once the shooting started, everybody they realized it was an entirely different game.
And that's really, I mean, that's why all these people went out. The U.S. grabbed it, the Russians grabbed it. The Germans grabbed.
You're talking about the gun?
I mean, they immediately either started buying it or developed their own. Like I think it said somewhere that the Germans developed, like as soon as they saw what was going on, they developed their own 75 millimeter artillery gun, and it was just at the time, it's like this is the game changer.
Yeah,
we either get it or we're dead. Like. How do we?
Well, I mean, there were a number of things that happened. Mustard gas.
Was that World War I?
That was World War I. Mustard gas, submarines.
Mm-hmm. Well, weren't there submarines earlier? I mean, maybe
they tried it during the Civil War, but it did not turn out very well.
Was it pedal? Did pedal power?
I think so, and I think it just went under, and it was just a horrible thing.
It was connected by spit and butters.
Yeah, it was a gigantic, this big metal monster that just. They got, they went under and it sank. But the Germans had perfected submarines, and that was terrifying ocean-going travelers. And then there were a number of things that really changed it. And the reason, as I understand it, that World War I took so long is it took such a long time for them to figure out how to even deal with the changes in warfare.
Yeah.
By the time World War II happens, they figured it out.
Yeah.
There's not trench warfare.
They already got
like
those.
that
They got that shit on tanks.
Yeah.
At that, actually, I think even in World War I, they were adapting the 75 to tanks.
Really?
I kept seeing something where I don't think it was widespread, but I think in some cases people were like, hey, you know what would make this really great? Since there's no recoil, let's just shove it on a tank.
Yeah,
like,
let's put it on a cart.
Like, right?
Let's put wheels on this thing and an engine, a motor that can. Yeah, and that would make a lot of sense because the biggest problem was moving forward.
Right.
If you could find something that would move you forward, especially in armor, something that was impervious to all of the other weaponry that was coming down. And just get forward because everybody was just stuck. So so it was a game changer in the war. It made a big boom. It was central to the lives of the people who drank the cocktail and so named it after a gun.
Yep, that's it. That's the history. It's pretty clean. There's no wondering why something is named whatever and. It makes sense, if you have a drink, it's probably pretty powerful. You take a sip, you go, oh, whoo! French 75, that is powerful.
Well, I guess that's the story. So we're going to try some of the power now. We're going to go to the Brixton in Andersonville in Chicago, where me and some friends are going to try some French 75s. French 75, 1 ounce Ford's gin, 1/2 ounce simple syrup, 1/2 ounce lemon juice, 3 ounces of EC Prosecco champagne. Okay, so now we have arrived at the Brixton here in Chicago, where we do our tasting portion of the show. A big portion of this is just plain old bar talk, but we'll also be talking about, what we think of the drink as they arrive. Now, the French 75 is not all that strange. I would say a good portion of people know that they exist, even if they haven't had them. I am joined by Nicole Pizzini.
Hi.
And Rachel Rubin.
Hello.
And Kevin Ratajczak.
Hey, guys.
And Bethany Lang.
Hello.
So, anybody here already have an experience with the French 75?
I do.
Not the weapon.
Not the weapon. In fact, learning that it was a weapon actually sort of undermines my first French 75 experience because it was just so... I thought it was called a French 75 just because it was fancy, right? Like, oh, it's French. Because this is my 19-year-old self. It was the first cocktail I ever had. My aunt made it for me.
Are you serious? This is number one?
This was... other than jungle juice, this was the first cocktail, right? My friend and I were at my aunt's house, and she made these cocktails for us, and I think it was mostly because she wanted one herself.
Okay.
And we just felt so adult, drinking these really fancy French-sounding cocktail drinks, and learning that it was named after artillery was kind of a bummer.
It was the fanciest artillery of the time. Yeah. The French do everything fancy, even artillery.
It's true. That I believe. Yeah.
Anybody else have an experience with the French 75?
They're delicious.
I never heard of it, actually.
You've never had one, Bethany?
I've had one.
Oh.
And they're delicious.
They're delicious.
So I'm pretty excited to drink one today.
I've never had a French 75, but this makes me think of the mistake we made on Christmas where we made gin and tonics without tonic and subbed in champagne instead.
Oh, that's right.
And got...
Oh, that hangover was
That was
evil.
so bad. It was just so bad. Christmas Day was awful.
Oh, that's
Awful.
This is similar to that, isn't it?
But this is going to be way better.
Be a lesson to you. This is a public service announcement. Do not make gin and tonics with gin and champagne.
It was really good. I've had cocktails with like champagne, vodka, and pineapple juice. That's really good.
Well, that sounds nice. That's like a tropical French 75.
Yeah.
It's like a French Caribbean.
It's a French Polynesian 75.
Exactly.
Polynesian 75. Oh my gosh.
Oh, and they have those delicious bricks of cherries in them.
Oh wow. Now we don't want to take too much of Michael's time because it's St. Patrick's Day and it's in Chicago, and so
We've got a full bar. However, I got a few minutes. What we got here is the French 75, a very classic drink, a very simple drink. It's basically Tom Collins gin sour, however you want to look at it, with instead of soda or 7, you're putting champagne. It's also served not on the rocks, it's served in a champagne flute. Some people call it a champagne topper or champagne float. I believe there should be a little bit more champagne. Having said that, there's still an honest cocktail in the glass. All right? So you have yourself a full shot of gin in there, gin and a half at the lovely Brixton. And I use the forged gin, fresh lemon juice. We make our own simple syrup. So it's a full shot and a half of gin, about a half ounce of lemon juice, about a half ounce of simple syrup. You shake that up, you strain it into a glass, and you top it with champagne. We use the Avisi Prosecco, which is lovely. Most people will garnish it with a lemon. We put the cherry in there just because, again, the gin sour usually, Tom Collins usually gets a cherry, and I just think the cherry looks good in the glass.
awesome. Thanks.
Oh my god, they're so pretty.
Hey, mine doesn't have a cherry.
Two of them
Mine
have
does.
lemon.
Mine
He
does
said
neither.
most people will garnish it with citrus.
Oh
So we
wow.
did 2 with citrus.
Assortment.
A selection.
Yep.
They do have really good bar cherries here, though.
And they look, he's right, they look beautiful.
I was in Houston this weekend, so while Chicago was tearing itself a new one, Houston was just normal. It was like, oh, it's St. Patrick's Day
They don't
weekend.
have Irish people there.
And no, they really don't. They really don't. They had a rodeo going on. Pitbull was singing.
The traditional St. Patrick's Day rodeo.
Awesome.
Where they dye the animals green.
And their sheep.
We had to take cabs everywhere, and every single person was like, "Oh, are you going to the rodeo?"
Oh my god, Texas.
Cam, did you see that article about like all the arrests and ambulance things that were called in Wrigleyville this weekend because of St. Patrick's Day?
It's pretty
No, not at all.
It is a shit show.
It's-
It starts at like 11 a.m.
Yeah.
and it goes until like
3:30
noon
in
the
the
next
morning.
day.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of depressing.
It's really depressing
Texas.
and affirms why I will never live in Wrigleyville.
Okay, can we all make a pact though that like next year on that Saturday we will find a way to get out of the city for the day?
Or at least just, like, oh, on topic, dig our trenches. Hide from the chaos.
Like I don't want to leave my house on that day anymore.
We can have like a pajama French 75 brunch day.
That sounds classy.
Because I've had your challah bread and it's amazing. So let's do that.
Should we drink this drink, you guys? Yeah. I want to drink it.
It smells yummy.
Oh, that is ginny. He ginned it up.
There's that shot and a half.
Oh, he ginned it up.
That's yummy. I likes it.
It is ginny. It is. It is very bright and cheery and bubbly and effervescent.
This would make a fun before dinner cocktail, I would think.
Yeah, it would make dinner fun.
Or also to drink with brunch. That would make brunch pretty fun too.
This is strong.
Yeah.
This is a very strong drink.
I've seen French 75s on the menu at brunch because it has champagne.
Right.
So I've seen it like instead of or beside mimosas.
You had basically like a lemon mimosa with a shot of gin.
Yeah, it's like a hardcore mimosa.
See, you add champagne to a drink and it just makes it an anytime drink. You know,
Yeah.
breakfast, lunch, dinner, cocktails.
These are life lessons that you learn from this podcast.
Adding champagne to a drink means you can drink it at any time of day.
This is actually more. I don't know why I didn't expect this to be this tart based on the ingredients, but for some reason my taste buds are sort of like searching for more sweetness to balance out the tart that I'm getting. I keep looking at the cherries in your drinks like enviously.
Wait, do you want to try the cherry one?
I don't know. Well, yes. I don't think it'll actually be different.
No, but you can try.
And I'm going to try yours.
Really? Really?
Actually, yeah.
Yeah.
Stirred up.
I was stirring mine too.
Stirred up, you get some of that nice maraschino up there.
Yeah.
That's nice.
I have a question regarding the champagne. So they use Prosecco in this, which tends to be sweeter than obviously like a dry champagne. So I'd be curious to see, and I would presume the same thing for mimosa, right? Like depending on the type of champagne that you use, if it's very dry or if it's sweeter, there may be a difference in taste as well. But given that this is made with a sweet, it doesn't taste very sweet.
And there's also simple syrup in there too.
Right, it does not taste sweet at all.
I think it's because there's such a large amount of gin.
Yeah.
That must be it.
For the drink, I should say. There's a large. I think the sweetness and the bite of the gin kind of like
Cancel.
cancel each other out a little bit to make something wonderful.
Yeah, I think it's well balanced.
Yeah.
I'm still cherry envious. Had we each like chosen our team, like picked a drink, I would have picked the one with the lemon. Because I like tart.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
I like tart, but the cherry balances it better.
Now, I'm opposed to citrus in general.
Did you try the? I mean, you don't really. Oh, you did?
I did try it, but I don't feel like I really tasted much of a difference. Maybe that has to do with just,
Maybe you have a mental block about tasting citrus.
or maybe I just
Maybe your
don't
taste
taste
buds.
things really anymore.
It's a good thing that you're doing a podcast about tasting things.
I know. When I was like in high school, like older, and then like after high school, I used to chlorinate pools for my dad's pool company in Arizona. And so you'd like go in and drop the thing in the pool and open up the gas and like basically mustard gas the pool.
Yeah.
And you know, when it comes up,
Yeah.
it burns the shit out of everything in your nose and
So you think you lost taste buds and stuff? You lost olfactory.
it's entirely possible. When chlorine gas touches water, it turns into hydrochloric acid. So like all of the moisture in your lungs and in your mouth and nose immediately just starts burning off, and your lungs turn to goo.
That's not good.
Have you ever
And the
heard
French
of
75
super tasters? So I've known some people who, like in high school in science class, there's these like strips you can buy on the internet.
Because that means that they're super accurate.
Right, and it's supposed to dissolve on your tongue, and if it like turns green or something, it indicates that you are a super taster, which means that you have like more and more complex taste buds or something than like 95% of the population, which means that you are supposed to taste things in a more sharp and complex way.
I need one of these.
Yeah.
Oral sex must be great for them.
You know what though? I bet it isn't.
What?
Because I bet strong flavors just like knock them out. They just like can't
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Is
Yeah.
that if you're like a super taster, wouldn't you just eventually go crazy?
Yeah, I mean,
Isn't it
to
like
me,
the people with the super hearing?
Right.
Just like
Yeah.
you know, you see that.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would imagine if you were a super taster, like something like that's very citrusy, like not even like this, but like some of the drinks that I've tried, you know, would just like you couldn't do it because it would like be almost painful. But you're also supposed to get some additional layers of complexity. Like, I can taste some smoke and some
Nuttiness.
Like, there are people who are super tasters. Apparently, it's very common for people who, like, sommeliers to be super tasters.
But I think that you also have to have a bigger vocabulary then, too.
Wow, dude.
That's true.
Yeah, I think you're right.
If you're a super taster, you have to study the dictionary
If
more.
there's anything that I have learned from watching the shows where, like, Food Network star, or they try and make you a TV chef, the hardest part of being a TV chef is describing what you are tasting.
That's why Andrew Zimmern describes everything as earthy, nutty, and gamey.
Gamey.
Straight from the barnyard.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why, also, podcasting is tough stuff.
But, you know, Andrew Zimmern, he doesn't eat anything that
That has
that most
complexity.
people would like.
Yeah.
You know? Like, or think that they like, you know? So it's like, everything is kind of...
Everything he eats is probably gamey or, what were the other ones?
Earthy and nutty.
Earthy and nutty.
Yeah, gamey, earthy, and nutty.
Like maggots or...
I'm surprised he doesn't describe things as like squirmy.
That's not a taste.
Yeah, that's...
That is an activity.
It's a strong sensation.
Has he ever eaten a cake? Do they ever allow him to eat a cake?
Probably, but it's made of something gnarly.
Yeah.
Like fish eggs, which that is a thing.
Durian cake.
I've seen him eat, like, what we would look at and think, like, oh, that's a steak, but it's like a rabbit. Not even a rabbit, something weirder, you know. So sometimes the preparations are common, but the item is not. Which is almost more of a
Long
mind
pig.
fuck. I am expecting this to taste like a steak, and holy shit, it does not.
That was my first experience with liver.
Yeah.
I was with my grandparents at a buffet,
Uh-huh.
and I saw these beautiful slabs
Yeah.
of dark brown meat, and I was like, ooh, I want some of that. And my grandfather's like, really? Okay.
My
Yeah, I
sister
didn't
loved
take it.
liver and onions. Love liver and onions.
Liver pate is okay.
Yeah.
I like
We've
liver
had it
pate.
here.
They have a good liver pate here at the Brixton.
And it was good.
Pate in general is pretty good. I have yet to try pate that I don't like.
Pate is just French for paste.
Yeah, it's inner paste.
So
Yeah, but do they make
it's any kind of meat that you turn into a spreadable cream.
Meat Whiz?
Yeah.
That's the American term for
And it is still
And it
good.
comes in a can.
Yeah, that's only if it's self-propelled.
Well,
It can only be a whiz.
That's what you get at Taco Bell. Self-propelled meat.
Soy
Man, that's just all soy.
Yeah.
Let's talk about something else.
Sorry. Something other than meat paste? How about artillery shells that turn humans into meat paste?
Yes,
Because you're
And we come full circle.
it's true. Yeah. And actually, there's a tie into the mustard gas, too. Because the French 75 actually was a delivery system for mustard gas.
Really?
Yeah, well.
How?
Well, you can have high explosive shells.
Yeah.
Or you can have shells that have a different kind of payload, like mustard gas.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So
Oh yeah, this was when what time are we looking at?
This is shortly after World War I.
One. So this would have been before the ban on the particularly egregious shit
yes,
in war.
it was during World War I, the end of
Yeah,
World
at the
War
end of
I,
World War
when
I was when they did the
Yeah.
convention.
Which is why so many soldiers just stayed in France to get fucked up.
Yeah.
Because Jesus Christ.
They were fucked. Because that was like the exploding bullets and all the really bad stuff. I mean, war is bad no matter what, but it was like especially bad.
I mean, like in the sense that what World War I was them discovering what new technology could do to warfare.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really high-tech stuff. I mean, they still had horses out there pulling
Yeah.
wagons and stuff.
And the artillery in it.
And it wasn't as good. I mean, a lot of this stuff, they were still developing it.
Yeah.
What I thought was kind of interesting too is this French 75, this cannon, evolved along with it. Because initially it was drawn by horses, and then actually it was a big hit, and everyone decided realized what a great gun it was. And the United States actually got the gun, used it. One of our presidents actually commanded a battery of these very...
Did the U.S. start producing them?
Basically, yes. I mean, they had a surplus of them, but yeah, they basically used it and produced it.
Because that's what the U.S. was really good at, was like looking at everybody else killing each other, and then making weapons really fast and really cheap. I mean, they did that in both world wars.
How did these people kill each other? Let's replicate.
Yeah, let's do it faster.
In
But I
typical
thought that was-
American fashion.
I thought that was interesting that president, which president?
Truman.
Yeah, Truman actually commanded a battery of these very cannons that this drink is named after. And I also find it interesting that this gun is basically the main armament on our early tanks, like Shermans and M3, the M3 Lee and M3 Grant, which are tanks that like we sold to the UK. All had like this French gun.
So they just took the gun and put it on wheels. They put it on the tank.
Yeah, they developed a new tank, so because it was a very effective weapon, even in the beginning of World War II.
When did tank warfare start?
World War I,
How early?
right away.
Really?
We had armored vehicles at the turn of the century.
Did they have tracks and stuff, or were they just like wagon wheels with metal on them?
No, well, yeah, actually, there were a few with just wheels, but eventually, and the British were really the ones that really had a lot of technology in this. They developed tanks that are very long with these long tracks that could actually traverse the trenches. The problem was it wasn't really good for the infantry because it was basically a moving wall of steel, and the infantry could advance behind it. But they're extremely slow, like 6 kilometers an hour slow.
Wow. Yeah, see, I didn't know this. I thought tanks were primarily something that happened in World War II.
They definitely played a big role, a large role in World War I, and they changed the face of battle. But the interesting thing I didn't know about the French 75 is it had such a long lifespan, and it was, such an important artillery piece, and one that we adopted and resold to other nations, and was only replaced like in 1941 in some degree by the 105 millimeter howitzer, which has I think that this cannon would have been known by civilians, non-military personnel, would have known about the French 75 in the first part of the 20th century. Just like even when I was a kid, like the howitzer, the 105 millimeter howitzer was just something that's talked about. And people don't talk about cannons anymore because, what's a cannon? But like the whole first part of the 20th century, it was a very effective means of shock and awe, delivering high explosive rounds, gas. It had a big impact.
And then when you think about that, you need to drink.
Yeah, let's drink.
But I mean, on the other side, like you think about the people who named the drink, what it meant to them.
It almost seems like a reclaiming.
I was going to say the exact same thing. It's a way to make something that's very big and scary fun and good.
And served in a champagne glass.
Right. I just came up with a wonderful pun.
Do it.
Do it. So I said this when we were chatting on Facebook earlier, but Jay really cracked me up with his French pronunciation. Which, if you look at the word 75 in French, it doesn't really look like how you say it because the French like to put lots of extra letters and things that you don't say. So 75 is 75. So what if you served and you you bottled a French 75? You could mark it as 75 in cans.
For the Francophile listeners.
Yeah, I was going to say, Rachel is like the only one of us here who speaks French.
False.
You speak French?
I took it in high school.
You were a French minor, you were a French major for a while.
Yeah.
I started out a French major.
Yeah. Can you say something fun for us in French?
No.
Oh.
Yes, you
Can you literally say something fun?
Voulez-vous coucher avec moi?
Quelque chose drôle.
Yeah, see?
Our drinks are gone, except for
Yeah.
mine. I've got a little bit.
I would think that this would be a good start off. Like, okay, here's what I envision. If you wanted to have like a really vibrant brunch, you serve everyone a French 75 at the very beginning, and then like that's your drink for a while. Like maybe you like nurse a mimosa the rest of the time, but like I think that would make for a very vibrant.
And then-
That's what vibrant means.
And then when you want them to leave, you serve them a Fairbank cocktail.
Yes. I like this. I think we all like it. I think we should have these all the time.
We should start each show with a French 75.
That would make things interesting.
Vibrant.
Yes.
That's the word.
Yeah, I don't think we need it. I mean, if Michael wants to do a riff, I would have another one, but I don't know if it's needed.
Yeah.
Well, I'm done.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm even gonna have a beer.
That was yummy. I would have this again. I would order it myself. I would order it for a friend.
Okay,
Now we're done.
well, we survived that. Thank God. It was close. So, if you're into thinking and drinking, let us blacken your liver. Bye now. Hey everybody, thanks for listening to the Monster in a Glass podcast. I'd like to thank Jason Cruz for researching our content, our regular tasting team Rachel Rubin, Kevin Ratajczak, Bethany Lang, and Nicole Pizzini for joining me in the grueling task of tasting the cocktails we discuss, the Brixton and their bartender Michael Donnelly for letting us cavort in their liquid playground, Dan Cruz for art direction and editing, and Mark Piani for the music at the head of the show. Go to blacklevelproject.com to see the show archive, become a member, contribute to the project, and get in touch with us. And follow us on Facebook and Twitter to get the latest news and as it happens updates during live events. And as always, if you're into thinking and drinking, let us blacken your liver.